Have you ever felt like you're fighting a war on a dozen fronts? Your career, your finances, your relationships, the constant flood of news and notifications, each one demanding a piece of your focus until there's nothing left for you. You feel stretched, reactive, and perpetually one step behind. What if I told you the solution isn't to fight harder, to manage your time better, or to find a new productivity hack? The solution is to lay down your arms on the battles that were never yours to fight in the first place. This is the first principle in building an iron mind, understanding what is yours to command and what is not. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus, a man who was born a slave and rose to become one of the most respected teachers in the Roman Empire, gave us the master key over 2,000 years ago. He called it the dichotomy of control. He stated it simply: some things are within our power, while others are not. Within our power are our opinion, motivation, desire, aversion. In a word, whatever is of our own doing. Not within our power are our body, our property, our reputation, our station in life. In a word, whatever is not of our own doing. Most of our anxiety, our frustration, and our wasted energy comes from a fundamental confusion between these two categories. We try to command the uncontrollable, and we neglect the one domain where we have absolute sovereignty: our own mind. I remember my old life in the tech world. I once spent 6 months of my life, and millions in capital, preparing for a product launch. I controlled every variable I could. The code was elegant, the marketing was aggressive, the team was brilliant. I was convinced this was my masterpiece. The day we launched, a competitor, one we never saw coming, announced a similar product, for free. The market shifted under my feet. Our launch was a catastrophic failure. For months, I was a ghost. I was consumed by rage at the competitor, by shame over the financial loss, and by bitterness at the unfairness of it all. My mind was a storm of things I could not control: the market, the actions of others, the final outcome. The distraction wasn't just the failure. The distraction was my resistance to the reality of the failure. I had abandoned my post as the commander of my inner citadel and become a prisoner to external events. The practical application of this is not passive resignation. It is a strategic reallocation of your most precious resource, your attention. I teach a simple, powerful exercise to the leaders I mentor. Take a piece of paper and draw 2 circles, one inside the other. In the inner circle, your citadel, write down everything that is 100% within your control: your effort today, your choice of attitude, how you treat your family, the integrity of your work, whether you exercise or not. In the outer circle, write down everything else: the economy, whether a client signs the contract, how your kids will ultimately turn out, what people think of you, the traffic on your commute. Now, here is the rule of the iron mind. You are only permitted to invest your emotional and mental energy in the inner circle. You can influence the outer circle, you can plan for it, but you cannot let your peace of mind depend on it. This isn't a one-time trick, it's a daily practice. It is the practice of constantly asking, is this mine to control? If the answer is no, you learn to let it go. It is the first, most critical cut in removing life's distractions. So, I ask you, where is your focus right now? Is it on the quality of your work, or on whether you'll get the promotion? Is it on being a loving partner, or on forcing your partner to be who you want them to be? Are you the architect of your inner world, or are you a slave to the weather outside? Once you understand what you can control, the next task is to build a fortress inside your mind where you can exercise that control. The Stoics called this the inner citadel, a bastion of reason, calm, and purpose that no external chaos can breach. A distraction is only a distraction if it can penetrate your defenses and command your attention. Most people's minds are not citadels. They are open-air markets, where any passing event, any stray comment, any notification can set up a booth and start shouting for attention. Building your citadel is the active process of becoming the gatekeeper of your own mind. This isn't about blocking out the world. It's about processing the world on your own terms. Seneca, a man who was one of the wealthiest in Rome and an advisor to the Emperor Nero, knew the pressures of a chaotic world better than most. He wrote, "A person's fears are lighter when the danger is at hand." What does this mean? It means that the imagined threat, the anticipated insult, the what-if scenario, these are the ghosts that haunt the unguarded mind. They are distractions born of a mind that has no walls. The citadel is built brick by brick through daily practice, turning philosophical principles into reflexive habits. I had a mentee, a brilliant surgeon named Elena. She was at the top of her field, but she was perpetually on the verge of burnout. Every potential complication in a surgery, every difficult patient family, every bit of hospital politics would send her into a spiral of anxiety. Her performance was impeccable, but her inner peace was non-existent. She was living in that open-air market, and the noise was deafening. The citadel we began to build for her wasn't about ignoring the risks of her job. It was about fortifying her response to them. Our practical work was a simple, three-part daily routine. First, a morning meditation on intention. Before the day's chaos could begin, she would spend 10 minutes defining what was in her inner circle for the day. Her focus in the operating room, her patience with her team, her clarity in communication. She was setting the terms of engagement. Second, we implemented cognitive journaling in the evening. She would write down one event that disturbed her peace and analyze it through the lens of the dichotomy of control. A patient's family was angry about a delayed procedure. Was their anger in her control? No. Was her professional calm and empathetic response in her control? Yes. This practice systematically trained her to separate external events from her internal judgment of them. Finally, we introduced a pattern interrupt, a physical anchor. Whenever she felt the familiar spike of anxiety, she would consciously pause, take one deep breath, and press her thumb and forefinger together. It was a physical signal to her brain. Return to the citadel. Assess what is truly yours to command. Within 6 months, Elena was transformed. The hospital was just as chaotic. The pressures were just as immense, but they no longer owned her. She had built a place within herself that was untouchable. Distractions still arrived at her gates, but she was the one who decided whether or not to let them in. That is the difference between a fortress and a field. Your mind is one or the other. I ask you to consider your own mind. Is it a fortress with a gatekeeper, or is it an open field where any thought can wander in and set up camp? What is one daily brick you could lay, starting today, to begin the construction of your own inner citadel? Once your citadel is under construction, you must learn to manage the territory outside its walls. The world is filled with things that glitter: wealth, status, pleasure, praise, and things that threaten: criticism, loss, pain, obscurity. The Stoics had a radical classification for all of these things. Indifference. This doesn't mean you shouldn't care about them at all. It means they are indifferent to your moral character, to the quality of your soul. You can be a good person whether you are rich or poor. You can be a person of integrity whether you are praised or slandered. The mistake we make, the source of nearly all our self-imposed distraction, is elevating these indifferents to the status of good or evil. There are, of course, preferred indifference and dispreferred indifference. It is natural to prefer the former, but the moment your inner peace becomes dependent on attaining one or avoiding the other, you have handed the key to your citadel to a force outside your control. You become a slave to circumstance. Chasing a preferred indifferent or fleeing a dispreferred one is the engine of modern distraction. The endless scroll for validation, the workaholism for a promotion, the paralyzing fear of public speaking, it's all rooted here. I learned this lesson the hard way, long after my initial business failure. As I rebuilt my career, I became obsessed with my reputation. I wanted to be seen as the wise entrepreneur who had risen from the ashes. I spent countless hours curating my public image, networking with the right people, and obsessively checking what was being said about me in my industry. My focus was a fractured mess. I was writing articles not to share wisdom, but to garner praise. I was taking meetings not for the substance, but for the connection. My reputation, a classic Stoic indifferent, had become my master. My turning point came from a blunt piece of advice from an old mentor. He saw my frantic energy and said, "Cassian, you're so busy polishing the trophy, you've forgotten how to play the game." It was a brutal, necessary shock. I had made the symbol of success more important than the substance of my work. The practical application I developed from this is what I call the test of purpose. Before engaging in any significant task, I ask myself one question. Am I doing this to improve my craft and serve my purpose, or am I doing this for the external reward it might bring? The first is an action originating from the inner citadel. The second is a plea for validation from the outside world. This simple question acts as a filter. It starves the distractions, the ego, the need for approval, the fear of judgment, by cutting off their food supply. Your attention. Think about your own goals. A promotion at work, growing your social media following, getting your child into a prestigious school. These are not bad things. But you must be relentlessly honest with yourself. Have they become the source of your fulfillment, or are they simply preferred outcomes of a life lived with purpose and virtue? If your company went bankrupt tomorrow, if your reputation was unfairly tarnished, if you faced a serious health crisis, what would be left? The Stoic wager is that if you focus on the quality of your character and your actions, the things you control, you can stand firm and centered, no matter which indifferent comes your way. So, ask yourself, what indifferent are you currently chained to? What external validation are you chasing at the expense of your internal peace? What would your life look like if you decided to prefer it, but did not need it to be content? We've talked about external distractions, the market, the opinions of others. But there is a far more insidious and modern form of distraction, one that disguises itself as work. I call it productive distraction. It's the illusion of motion without progress. It eats the flurry of activity that keeps you busy but doesn't move you 1 inch closer to your essential goals. In the tech world I came from, this was a pandemic. It was the endless research that was really just glorified web surfing. It was the constant tweaking of a presentation deck instead of making the hard sales call. It was sitting in back-to-back meetings to align on a strategy that everyone knew was just a way to avoid the deep, difficult, and lonely work of actual creation. This form of distraction is so dangerous because it feels good. It allows you to tell yourself, I worked a 12-hour day without ever having to confront the terrifying reality that you accomplished nothing of substance. It's a tranquilizer for an ambitious mind. The ancient philosophers didn't have to contend with email inboxes, Slack notifications, and the infinite rabbit hole of the internet. But the principle they taught is more relevant now than ever. Distinguish the vital from the trivial. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private meditations, most of what we say and do is not essential. If you can eliminate it, you'll have more time and more tranquility. Ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary? This question, is this necessary, is the sword that cuts through the web of productive distraction. For years, my primary work was managing my inbox. I took pride in reaching inbox zero. I was responsive, efficient, and always connected. But in reality, I was letting the world's agenda dictate my own. Every email was a small claim on my attention, a tiny distraction that prevented me from engaging in the focused, strategic thought that my business truly needed from me. I was a world-class firefighter, but I had completely forgotten my job was to be the architect of the building. The most effective practical tool against this is what I call the 4-hour fortress. For a 4-hour block each day, ideally your most productive hours in the morning, you create an impenetrable fortress around your attention. This means no email, no phone, no social media, no meetings. It is you and the single most important task of your day. It will feel excruciating at first. Your mind, conditioned for constant stimulation, will scream for a hit of distraction. You will suddenly feel the urge to just quickly check something. This is the withdrawal. But if you hold the line, something remarkable happens. You achieve a state of deep work. You make more progress in those 4 hours than you did in the previous 2 days of scattered, shallow activity. This isn't a time management hack, it's a declaration of sovereignty over your own mind. It is you, the commander of your citadel, deciding what matters rather than letting the noise of the world decide for you. This requires you to be ruthless with yourself and to set clear boundaries with others. It means being comfortable with not responding instantly. It means letting go of the ego-driven need to be in the loop on everything. It's a trade. You give up the feeling of being busy in exchange for the reality of being effective. I ask you to look honestly at your last workday. How much of it was spent in deep, meaningful creation, and how much was spent in the shallow waters of productive distraction? What is the one necessary task that, if you gave it your full, undivided attention, would change the entire nature of your work? What is keeping you from building a fortress around it? The most powerful distractions are not the minor daily annoyances, but the major emotional shocks. A sudden job loss, a betrayal by a friend, an unexpected health diagnosis. These events don't just distract us, they have the power to completely derail our lives, precisely because we refuse to contemplate them. We operate under an implicit assumption that our lives will continue on their current trajectory. This makes us fragile. The Stoics had a powerful antidote to this fragility, premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils, or what we might call negative visualization. This is not pessimism, it is a strategic rehearsal for adversity. It is the practice of periodically and calmly imagining that you have lost the things you value. Imagine your business has failed. Imagine your reputation is ruined. Imagine you have lost your health. You don't dwell here in a state of morbid fear. You visit this reality for a few moments to strip it of its power to shock you. You ask yourself, if this were to happen, what resources would I call upon? How would I endure? How could I still live a life of virtue and purpose? By rehearsing the loss, you accomplish 2 critical things. First, you cultivate immense gratitude for what you have right now. The coffee you are drinking, the health in your body, the presence of your loved ones. They all become more vivid and precious. Second, you build psychological resilience. When a setback does occur, it feels familiar. You've already walked that path in your mind. It is no longer a terrifying unknown, but a problem to be managed. Early in my career, I was terrified of public speaking. The potential for humiliation, forgetting my words, being ridiculed, failing to connect with the audience, was a massive source of anxiety that distracted me for weeks before any presentation. I would lose sleep, my focus would be shattered, and my work would suffer. I decided to apply premeditatio malorum. Every morning for a week before a big speech, I would spend 5 minutes vividly imagining the worst possible outcome. I pictured myself on stage, mind completely blank, the audience starting to whisper and laugh. I imagined the catastrophic failure in detail. Then I would walk myself through the aftermath. I would still have my family. I would still have my core skills. My character would be intact. I would survive. My life would go on. The practical application of this is a weekly ritual. Set aside 15 minutes. Write down the 5 things you value most. Then, one by one, briefly imagine they have been taken from you. Don't wallow in the sadness. The goal is to move to the next step. Ask, what inner resources would I use to endure this? How would I maintain my character? This isn't about creating anxiety. It's about transmuting potential anxiety into current strength and gratitude. You are effectively inoculating yourself against the emotional shock of future misfortunes. The unexpected events of life will lose their power to distract you because, in your mind, They will no longer be entirely unexpected. You have prepared your citadel for the siege. Reflect for a moment. What is the fear that silently distracts you the most? The fear of losing your job, your relationship, or your health? What would happen if you spent a few minutes each week rehearsing that very scenario, not to invite it, but to rob it of its power over you today? We have talked about proactive strategies, choosing what to focus on, building your citadel, and rehearsing for adversity. But what happens when distraction and chaos inevitably break through? What do you do when the worst has happened, when reality delivers a blow you did not anticipate? This is where we encounter one of the most powerful and challenging of all Stoic principles: amor fati, the love of one's fate. This isn't just passive acceptance. It is an active, enthusiastic embrace of whatever happens, good or bad, as if you had chosen it yourself. The German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, who was deeply influenced by the Stoics, framed it as the formula for human greatness: that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. Not merely bear what is necessary, still less conceal it, but love it. This is the ultimate short circuit for distraction. Why? Because the root of so much of our mental turmoil is the argument we have with reality. This shouldn't have happened. It's not fair. If only. This internal negotiation is a black hole for your energy and attention. It is a distraction of the highest order because it is a fight you can never win. Reality is undefeated. Amor fati is the decision to stop fighting. This concept saved me after my burnout. For the longest time, I was consumed by regret. If only I hadn't been so arrogant. If only I had listened to my body. This if only narrative was a constant, draining distraction that prevented me from rebuilding. The shift happened when I consciously decided to reframe the entire experience. What if this burnout wasn't the worst thing that ever happened to me? What if it was the best thing? What if it was the only event powerful enough to shatter the false foundation my life was built on? What if it was a necessary fire that had to burn everything down so I could build something real and lasting? I chose to see it not as a curse, but as a crucible. I chose to love the fate that broke me because it gave me the opportunity to become unbreakable. A practical way to cultivate this mindset is through an exercise I call finding the seed of advantage. When you are faced with a negative event, a project fails, you get sick, someone betrays you, resist the initial urge to rage against it. Instead, take out a journal and force yourself to answer this question: how can I use this? Write down every conceivable way this event could be a catalyst for growth, learning, or change. The project failed. Now you have invaluable data on what not to do. You're sick? Now you have an opportunity to reevaluate your health habits and practice patience. You were betrayed? Now you have learned a hard lesson about trust and human nature. You are not trying to pretend the event is good. You are performing a kind of mental alchemy, transforming a raw, painful event into fuel for your own development. You are treating every obstacle not as a barrier, but as a new path. This is the opposite of a victim mentality. It is the mindset of the creator, the alchemist, who takes the lead of circumstance and transforms it into the gold of character. When you can look at whatever life throws at you and say, "I would have chosen this," you become immune to the distraction of resentment and regret. Think of a past adversity that still causes you pain or resentment. What is the story you tell yourself about that event? What would it mean to stop fighting it and instead ask, what gift, what lesson, what strength did this event forge in me? How can you choose to love it for what it taught you? In the 21st century, the most valuable resource is no longer land or oil or gold. It is focused human attention. Every corporation, every app, every media outlet is engaged in a relentless zero-sum war to capture and monetize your eyeballs and your brain cycles. They are professional distraction artists, and they are armed with algorithms and data that know your psychological weaknesses better than you do. In this environment, The ability to control your own attention is not just a skill, it is the fundamental prerequisite for a life of purpose and meaning. To be constantly distracted is to be perpetually poor in the only currency that truly matters. The Stoics understood this innately. They didn't have smartphones, but they had the distractions of the Roman Forum: gossip, status games, political drama. Seneca wrote letters to his friend Lucilius, warning him against being a man of the crowd, pulled in every direction by the demands and opinions of others. He advised, "The man who is everywhere is nowhere." This has never been more true. If your attention is fractured into 100 tiny pieces by notifications, emails, and social media feeds, you are effectively nowhere. You are not present with your work, you are not present with your family, and you are not present with yourself. You are merely a conduit for a stream of external data. As an entrepreneur, I fell into this trap completely. I believed the myth that to be successful, I had to be always on. I was connected to everything and in command of nothing, least of all myself. My attention wasn't a powerful spotlight I could direct, it was a broken mirror, reflecting 1,000 scattered images. The great irony is that the most valuable breakthroughs in my business, the ideas that generated real wealth, never came when I was connected. They came in the rare moments of quiet focus, on a long walk, in the shower, staring at a whiteboard with no phone in the room. The value was created in the absence of distraction. The most powerful practical discipline for reclaiming this currency is the practice of intentional disconnection. This goes beyond the 4-hour fortress we discussed earlier. This is about building rhythms of true silence and solitude into your life. This could be a digital Sabbath, one day a week where you do not use screens. For many, this sounds as impossible as giving up food. It could be scheduling a 1-hour walk every day without your phone. The purpose is not just to escape distraction, but to retrain your brain to be comfortable in its own presence. It is in this silence that you can hear your own thoughts, solve complex problems, and connect with your deeper purpose. You are recalibrating your mind away from constant, cheap stimulation and toward deep, valuable reflection. This is a radical act of rebellion against the modern economy. You are declaring that your attention is not for sale. It is your own, to be invested as you see fit. And, like any valuable currency, you should invest it wisely, in your most important work, in the people you love, and in the cultivation of your own inner peace. Everything else is a bad investment, a squandering of your most precious asset. So, I ask you, who owns your attention right now? Is it you, or is it the algorithm? What is one small, concrete ritual of disconnection you can commit to this week to begin reclaiming your most valuable currency? We have discussed strategies, mental models, and daily practices. But there is one final, ultimate tool for cutting through life's distractions. It is the most powerful, the most clarifying, and the most humbling of all Stoic principles. It is the practice of memento mori. Remember, you must die. This is not a morbid obsession with death. It is an energizing awareness of life. It is the ultimate filter for what truly matters. When you hold the finite reality of your time in your mind, the trivialities that consume your days are exposed for what they are: meaningless noise, the fear of what someone thinks of you, the anger over a petty insult, the anxiety about a future that may never come. All of it evaporates in the face of this one great truth: your time is limited. Every moment you spend on a meaningless distraction is a moment you have stolen from your purpose, your loved ones, and your life itself. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, wrote his meditations as a private journal, and the theme of his own mortality is a constant refrain. He wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." This wasn't a thought that paralyzed him with fear. It was a thought that galvanized him to action. It was his operating system for living a life of virtue and consequence. It forced him to ask the essential questions. Is this action worthy of a person with only a short time to live? Is this argument worth a piece of my finite existence? Is this worry a good use of my last few thousand days? I experience the power of this principle most profoundly, not through philosophy, but through life. When I was in my late 50s, a close friend and business partner passed away suddenly from a heart attack. He was a man who was always too busy. Too busy for that vacation with his wife. Too busy to take up the hobby he always dreamed of. Too busy to have the difficult but necessary conversations with his children. He was consumed by the distractions of someday. And then he had no more days. His death was a brutal, clarifying slap in the face for me. I looked at my own calendar, filled with non-essential meetings and obligations I had said yes to out of habit or ego, and I saw it for what it was, a betrayal of my own limited time. The practical application of this is to make it real. Don't just think about it abstractly. Place a reminder in your environment. Some people use a coin that says memento mori. I keep a simple, unadorned skull on my bookshelf. It's not there to be grim. It's there to be my most honest advisor. When I find myself getting pulled into a stupid online argument or stressing about something outside my control, I look at it. It asks me, is this how you want to spend your time? The answer is almost always a resounding no. It cuts through the noise and brings me back to the essential. It is the ultimate tool for prioritizing what is vital and discarding what is not. This final principle is the one that holds all the others together. The dichotomy of control matters because your time is too short to waste on things you can't change. The inner citadel is vital because it protects the precious, limited resource of your attention. Amor fati is necessary because you do not have time to argue with a past you cannot alter. Everything comes back to this. You are alive. This is a temporary condition. Do not squander it. So my final question to you is this. If you knew you had 1 year left to live, what distractions would you cut out of your life? Starting today. What truly matters? Live that.